Hello and welcome to All For Women's Football. We are back and this is, of course, our Monday Night Ramble. Yes, indeed, this is where we're going to be spending loads of time having a little look at all of the things that have been going on over the last 7 days. This is a 7-day roundup and we'll be back in around about 12 seconds. Got no idea if anybody counted that, but it should be 12 seconds. That's what it says on my media there. Hello, welcome. Lovely to have you here, and lovely, of course, to have our panel together as well. Get out of here, Connor. Come on now. Three fake. Don't say that. You'll never get people on the other channel, will you? If you keep saying things like that. Brilliant. Lovely to have you both with us. Liberty, how are you today?
I'm really well. I'm really happy. So nobody ruin my good mood, please. Actually, because you liked the trivia question so much last week, Barry, I have another one. And I think that you should get this because I thought some, and I think they were slightly too niche, but this has been widely reported. So one of you two should get it. So, Felicia Skroder, obviously from BK Häcken, is currently 2025's top goal scorer in women's football. And she has scored a certain amount of goals in the league that has got her there. But how many goals did she score to get her currently to be 2025 top women's goal scorer?
Across all leagues?
Yes. So the entire world of women's football, she has scored the most goals this year.
I'm gonna plump. I have no idea. I'm gonna plump for 32.
It's a good number. It's a good number. I'm thinking possibly more, so I'm going to go 35.
And Connor in the comments has gone 34.
Oh, he has.
I thought that one of you would have seen this because, as I said, it has been widely reported by people more official than me. She's scored 30 goals this season.
That's
so it's very close. But you're all very close. I'm quite impressed.
She wins.
Yeah, and she's the first player since 2021 to score 30 goals in a Damallsvenskan season. And the last player to do that in the league was this player called Caroline Sager, if you've heard of her. Just some real nobody of Swedish football, to be honest, just complete unknown. She also has double digits of assists as well. She was like about 12 on the combined goal contributions list for the league. She was about 12 ahead of second place, which was Ellen Wangerheim, because second, third, fourth in the top 5 was all Hammarby players, but she was like completely far and above ahead. And also 18. She's 18. And also, I also looked it up. Before this season, she'd only scored 13 goals for Häcken in Damallsvenskan. So now she's at 43 because she's got 30 goals this season. But that was my trivia. I'm going to think of something less Swedish-based for next week. But
okay.
Listen,
it was good. Gave us both a chance to guess. And Sean was closest there. So congratulations to you, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm fine. No trivia from me, but I'd like to be the first to say, I've told you before, I'd like to say Rusha Littlejohn is a whopper. There we go. We'll start there. We won't mention it, but we all know. So we'll just leave it at that, but I'm all right, Barry.
It's a hell of a move, that. I mean, I'm sure I saw somebody win Olympic gold doing that in either the judo. Yeah, probably where you would see that sort of thing. It is, it's quite something. Yeah, I think Bret Hart would have been impressed with that. Anyway, let's press on. And guys, it is time. Ordinarily, this would be the point where we look at the very first thing that we need to discuss. But I've just got to have a little moment, if you won't mind, because I was absolutely gobsmacked. Now, I sat here and said to you all, don't vote for us. It's fine. in the FCAs, go and vote for All for United WFC. They deserve it. They put all the work in. Don't bother voting for us. It wasn't some sort of tactical ploy. I was not trying to make you do anything other than what I suggested. But thank you if you were one of the people that decided they were going to get up and vote. We don't have an Instagram account, so we're not going to get any votes off from there. So I'm not entirely sure how we have managed to do so well. But upon talking to Connor, All for United WFC did manage to win the Gold Award at the FCAs for the best in women's football, which was superb. And as I'm sitting there texting him saying, oh, well done, Connor, that's brilliant. Oh, I'm so chuffed for you. He's gone, did you see who came second? And I'm like, no, I did not. Twitter is not uploading. And then I get a beautiful picture that All for Women's Football was silver in best in women's football, which means the All For brand has nailed best in women's football. We've taken the 1-2. But I'm absolutely gobsmacked. And it is genuinely down to the wonderful people that we managed to get on, the superb little group that we've managed to have, the excellent community we have building within our comments and the people watching us. So a massive thank you for getting us involved. It got me a little bit emotional. May have been a little bit of, because I wasn't expecting it. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you to everyone who comes on and makes the shows what they are, because without you guys, it would just be me chatting, and that's nowhere near as much fun.
Before you move on, by the way, I know many of the people in the comments will know, a lot of other people know, Barry's a very humble man. He very much praises a lot of people, but none of this would be possible without Barry. Barry gets the people on, Barry does the thumbnails, Barry writes the script. I mean, there is a bit of a script. I know at times it really doesn't look like we have a script, but there is an order of some sorts, and none of this would be possible without Barry. And this man works so hard to bring us all the show every week, especially with the non-league lingo as well. So give yourself a huge pat on the back, young man, because none of this would be possible without you. So take a lot of credit yourself.
Well, thank you very much. As I say, it's all a team, though. It was a brilliant thing, but thank you. Much appreciated for what you're saying. It's a labour of love. And with that labour of love, let's get back to talking to why we are actually here, which is, of course, to put the spotlight not on people like me, but on the women that are playing such fantastic football. And there are, so many talking points today that trying to write a script for this one is not the easiest of things to do. But there's a million and one places to start. But I feel like if you're ever going to start anywhere, you've got to start with the champions. And we have got some champions. And we spoke about this not so long ago, guys. Who is going to be the champions of the NWSL? It was either going to be Washington Spirit or it was going to be Gotham FC. Gotham FC, by the way, who just scraped in 8th against the Washington Spirit side that had a really good season. Who do you reckon won? Well, of course, the answer to that question is the Bats themselves. They did manage to win it. It was incredibly impressive, really, but a 1-0 win for Gotham FC. Rose Lavelle really doing the business there. Liberty, when I mentioned it, your head went in your hands. There were many different... It's their second year in a row. Washington Spirit have made it to the final and then just imploded.
Yeah, and I put my head in my hand because we sat here last week and you said, who's going to win? And I said, with full chest and full confidence, Washington Spirit. And it mainly was to spite Sean, who said Gotham. So I thought, you know what, I'll go with the other team just in case. At least one of us would be right then. But as ever, I was in fact wrong. So well done, Sean, for your correct call. I should have trusted you more and not tried to spite you. But yeah, I mean, the goal itself is unbelievable. But the fact that from kickoff, Jayden Shaw's trying to lob the keeper from the halfway line is just like the most NWSL thing of all time. Like, that's the energy that the NWSL brings to women's football. But then, yeah, the finish from Rose Lavelle is just I don't have words. She just strikes it in such a beautiful way, which is very Rose Lavelle, because she is such an unbelievable player and has been for so long. But from the edge of the box, just first time hit, and then you go, fair enough. That's got to be the game gone because 80th minute just struck 80 or something. Yeah, so before then it didn't look like anyone was going to do it. But once again, Gotham win it late. They won both their playoffs before quite late. One in extra time and one way after the last 15-minute mark. So clearly a sign that this team never gives up, and congratulations to them because it was very well deserved.
It absolutely was. And here you go, you got Sipway saying Sean needed that move. What a signing for Gotham. Sean, first things first, do you agree with that? What's your thoughts on the game? And of course, we always offer a right to reply. So what do you make of this that Connor has just disgracefully thrown at you there? Shade immediately.
I like how he backs Brighton rather than his own team. His own team finished lowly like that sometimes as well, but no, I'll take it. He's not going to rile me up yet, so it's far too early in the show for that. I actually stayed up and watched all of this, and for those of you who didn't stay up and watch it, you didn't miss much. It was quite a drab game, nothing really to get too excited about. But what I do think Gotham did really well, they nullified everything Spirit tried to do. We look at this Spirit team and all the attacking talent they've got, from Rodman to Monday to Batoon to Cantore, Kouassi. None of them could do anything because Gotham just set up so well that they couldn't allow those Spirit flair players to create those moments of magic to help them over the line. And what I really liked is when Carlos Amaros made that change really early, I think maybe on the hour mark, he took Real off and put Bruninho on because Real was on a yellow card, had just committed another dubious foul, and straight away like, right, you're off, Bruninho, come on. Ultimately, Bruninho sets up the goal for Lavelle. But what I think it showed tactically how well Amaros did compared to Gutierrez, because there was 2-3 minutes before the goal, Hal Hirschfeld got injured and she went off on the side and came back on, played an extra minute. And in that minute, she's slightly out of position, and that opens up the gap for Rose Lavelle to score. And you're just thinking, well, if Hirschfeld isn't on the field, if you had someone fit, firing, alert, switched on, does that goal happen? It's one of those we'll never know. But ultimately, I was just so impressed with the way Gotham set up, the job Amaros did. And yeah, fair play to Gotham, because I overall in that 90 minutes, I think it was a thoroughly deserved win.
Completely agree. I mean, I think that's their fourth final, of which they've won once. And that was it. So they're not quite always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but they were certainly skirting with that particular saying, I suppose, there. Shamrock here saying, coach leaving, Hal Hirschfeld on after that injury allowed the goal to happen for Gotham to win. So, yeah, lots to look at there. I feel like I ask this question almost every time that we look at this, but is there a part of this where you can look at the playoff situation and the championship game that they play, and do you think it's an acceptable thing that they put this in there because it's obviously going to be a money spinner, and obviously this game was on TNT for us, so I don't think you could just watch it on the usual NWSL. Do they need that in order to ensure they've got the money in the league? And does this not impact almost like their credibility? Because the winners being the team that finished 8th, should we look at this as like a separate tournament and still give, Kansas City Current what they deserve, which is their flowers for having absolutely nailed it for an entire season?
I'm going to go first. Sorry, Sean. I think that the reason why playoffs work in the NWSL is because there is no relegation or promotion battle. So there's still something for them to fight for when it comes to the end of the season, because everyone wants to finish in one of those top 8 spaces, so you get, as they call it, a postseason, and you get a playoff, and you get the excitement of a playoff. But I do think that in the hullabaloo of whoever wins the playoffs, there is a factor that forgets that it's not always the same team. Obviously, last season Orlando Pride did the double. So it's slightly different because they get double flowers because you won the normal league and then you won the playoff. But I do think people are forgetting what incredible run Kansas had. And I think that if it was, a more traditional competition set up as in how us people on the European circuit understand football, they would have more of a hullabaloo. I'm enjoying the word hullabaloo today. But also at the same time, I saw somebody, I can't remember who it was, but an American journalist I follow who, follows the NWSL very closely, say that like Gotham have nailed knockout football. They also won the CONCACAF this year, which is sort of a bit like the Champions League. It's all of CONCACAF's leagues. They play together. So you get the Mexican League, the Canadians. Well, it was actually development teams, but soon it will be the actual NSL, because now they have, obviously that league is now finished, so they've got a proper league of their own. They all play each other in a Champions League-esque kind of thing, CONCACAF, and Gotham won that in the summer. So that's their second knockout football win this year. And I do think that it takes a different mentality to win knockout football for a club. And I think that we see that in Champions League and who gets knocked out, in various places in Champions League in Europe. But I do think at points it does sort of the big hullabaloo, once again I'm going to say the word, of the playoffs does slightly overshadow the rest of the season, purely because it's so concentrated. You get the quarterfinals, then the weekend after is semi-finals, and the weekend after that is the finals. In about a 3-week span, it's all over. So because of it's so concentrated, it's not spread out in the same way that a league season or other knockouts are, that it does get all the attention. However, I did see some, and I'm going to assume that they were international, so they're not American fans, but people on Twitter complaining that they didn't even realize that the final was happening. And I'm going to once again assume, purely because on who was replying, I know that they are based here in England, but they were saying they didn't realize until Saturday afternoon that that the final was even happening. So I do think maybe that there needs to be more of it, because we have, there's people internationally who don't live in America who do want to watch the big final, or they want to watch the league more. So maybe there needs to be more from the NWSL as a league to make people know that these big games are happening. But yeah, I do think it slightly overshadows the proper league season as such. But at the same time, if you can win such a concentrated amount of games right at the end of your season as well, then it's also worth celebrating. I think we all should just celebrate people more. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, and it's not singular.
Sorry, Barry.
No, I was just going to ask you, obviously, to say what you wanted to say about that, but also to just add to a question that's been put here, and Liberty afterwards, feel free to jump in as well. But do you think Trinity Rodman is worth the big money that she's after? Bad back at 23, seemed like she'd hurt herself getting in the final. Is she worth the risk? So your thoughts on what Liberty was saying, and then if you could jump into that'd be grand.
Yeah. So I come from the playoff angle, a very different viewpoint to a lot of other people, because I love my American sports. I love the NFL, love the NBA, NHL, MLB, all that. And the playoff system just works in America, and I love it. The drama, the unpredictability, the fact you do have to have a different mindset. But you top your league, but that only gives you, that's meant to give you a favourable draw in the next round, because you play the lower seed, and that's normally how it works. But these things don't happen. Sometimes the number one seed does lose, and I think Kansas City were unlucky that Chewinga got injured when she did. I think if Chewinga did play, I think you're looking at a very different game, because Gotham have to try and contain one of the most clinical forwards in the game currently. But even then, then you still have to play the next highest seed on your side of the draw, and then the next highest seed in the final. So Gotham still haven't had it easy. They haven't had to play at home. They haven't played at home either. To do all of this on the road, again, a mentality thing. Is meant to be, is literally the hardest possible route for Gotham they could have had, and they've done it. And I think you have to applaud that. And no, but I think the playoffs are. I look forward to it every year because it's unparalleled drama. We have nothing like it in Europe alone. There's nothing like it, and I'd like to see it more in Europe. But I completely understand it's this very American thing. Same in Mexico. We had a really good final in the Liga MX with Tigres coming out on top 4-3 against Club America. 40,000 fans, I think, for that second leg as well. Brilliant. And I just think North America do it so well. But I totally understand the needing to hype it up more to an international audience as well. I totally get it. I'll come to you in a minute. On the Trinity Rodman one, I get it. I understand where they're coming from with the bad back. I think the injuries are a bit... It can be an issue. If you choose to look at it that way, I can understand the viewpoint. However, she is phenomenal. And you've got to take... Sometimes you've got to take the rough, the smooth. You can either have a phenomenal player that's injury prone, or you're like, oh, don't want them at all, and let someone else have her. Is that, what do you want? Do you want to risk it, or do you have the fear of someone else having her? Say, for example, these two are injured. I think it's quite publicised. If Arsenal say, oh, she is good, but we're a little bit worried about the injuries, and that little team down the road, Chelsea, we'll have her. Then what? Then say Rodman goes on an unbelievable tear in the second half of the WSL season, scores crucial goals, maybe one against Arsenal. Then Arsenal are in, well, we had a chance to sign her, but with the injuries. So I do get the injury issues, but I think she is a risk willing to take because she is, on her day, unstoppable.
I have nothing. I completely agree with what Sean just said about Rodman. I actually have absolutely nothing to add because I think everything he just said is what I would have told you anyway. I do think, though, it's funny that Colin said you went full teacher mode. That just made me giggle. I put my hand up to just say this. Also, the NSL also had a playoff final, which had similar drama. Toronto went ahead, then Vancouver managed to win it 2-1. So it's a recurring theme in the North America leagues. Everyone gets in on the action of an interesting final. Interesting, that's not what I meant. I meant something a bit more exciting of a word, but I went with interesting. I have nothing to add about Rodman. However, I would like to share my fun fact that I found out about Gotham. Actually, it's about Ann-Katrin Berger, because it was widely reported by everyone, and it is true, I'm not going to deny this, that Jess Carter is the first player in history to win both a European title with the Lionesses and a American title with Gotham in a year. That is true. But I was thinking about other people who have like won things this year by winning with Gotham. Ann-Katrin Berger has now won a league equivalent in every country she's played in. She won the Bundesliga in 2011 to 2012. Then obviously she won about 1 million league titles with Chelsea. And now she's won league equivalent with Gotham, which is, I think, unbelievable for any player to do. But when you think about Anne's story, like what she's been through, what she's had to fight through in her life to still be playing and to still be such an important goalkeeper, it's just unbelievable. And the fact that this is her third league equivalent in her third country is just absolutely nuts. And yeah, hats off to her, because to keep fighting back like she has and to keep going and still be like so brilliant is just unbelievable. And yes, the only player that tops that is Pernille Harder, who's won a league title for 10 straight years, which is insane. That is just, if you ever doubt how good, this has turned into a conversation about Pernille Harder, but if you ever doubt how good she has won 10 straight league titles, which is just absolutely absurd. But yeah, that was my fun fact about Ann-Katrin Berger. Thank you.
Where do we rank AKB in goalkeepers in history?
Top 5, top 3. It's just got to be up there. I'm sorry.
This is what I'm asking.
Genuinely.
Yeah, she's got to be top 5 because you've got off the top of my head, Sari van Veenendaal is in that top 5. Angra has to be in that top 5.
Hope
Solo is in that top 5. You probably have to. There is a good conversation to have Berger in the top 5 for sure.
I say top 5.
Lindahl, that's the other one I was trying to think of. Yes, thank you.
I think that's the top 5. I'm not going to try and tell you where everyone sits, but that if you're going to say a top 5 group, that's that group. But yeah, Anne has to be up there, 100%. I've genuinely, I think she might be the best ever goalkeeper to play in the WSL. Like, honestly, I think she is unbelievable. And also to be, 35 isn't old for a goalkeeper. Like, that's like peak age. But once again, to go through what she's been through and to still be playing at 35 when she could have quite literally hung up the gloves and said, look, this is too much on my body. I can't do this anymore. To still be going and also to be in a completely different league, different style, because it's so different to the WSL. It's just unbelievable. And also she played for Birmingham, which is like a great fun fact that I feel like is overlooked quite a bit. She played for Birmingham City. That's just like WSL heritage right there.
It seems bizarre, but they once upon a time they were big hitters in the game. So there we go. Well, there you are. Very, very interesting. So the NWSL is over for another season. They will be back in 2026, and we should all look forward to that. We can go away, back over the Atlantic and the Pacific, whichever way around you want to go. It's up to you. But you will end up, due to the beauty of the world being round, you will end up in Europe. And that's where we're going to pop to now, because there was obviously some big news. Well, I say big news, it was news, so we'll talk about it. But we've got 5 teams that are now guaranteed qualification into the next rounds of the UWCL, the UEFA Women's Champions League, and lots going on there. So those 5 teams are in an order that matters. Barcelona and Lyon, both with 10 points at the moment. You've got Wolfsburg and Manchester United and Bayern Munich. So those 5 teams have made it through. I'm going to ask you, first of all, any surprises in that list for you? To be 4 games in and to have them definitely through. Any surprises, first of all, in that list?
No, can I just poop on your parade a little bit? You have to be quite crap to not be one of the worst 6 teams in this competition, especially when you come from one of the major nations. Okay, PSG are having a diabolical season, and it is quite funny. That's a special case. However, you have to be, with the resources and finances these big nations have, you have to have a cock-up of unbelievable circumstances to not be in that top 12. So quite frankly, not worth celebrating.
But to have done it as early as they have.
There's only 2 games left. If you've done it after 3, fair play. There's only 2 left.
Okay, Squad's gone full bits of Eldrew there.
If you're on United, by the way, you've already played your pot 3 teams and your pot 2 teams. You haven't even played your best teams yet. So, dare I say, it's been quite a favourable fixture list for Man United as well. And you can say that about a couple of clubs. So, quite frankly, it's not worth celebrating.
I love how you've come out swinging for Manchester United there, when the question was purely, were there any surprises in this?
Easy target.
But boom, off he goes. It's hard to have a go at the other 4, to be fair. But Liberty, what say you?
I'm going to say Wolfsburg, purely for the fact of, I also think they've had decently easy draws, and also the United game was a mess. I was expecting, I think without Fallon, I was expecting a scoreline that read like 4-3, maybe 2-1 sort of idea. I thought both teams were going to have chances and score, but I wasn't expecting it to go down how it did. But besides that, I think Wolfsburg, I still think are, and I don't know if I've said this on here or I've said it elsewhere. I think Wolfsburg are still trying to, essentially, Wolfsburg are still trying to deal with the fact that they lost your brand to Lyon. And they also lost a lot of players. They brought a lot of players in, but the manager still doesn't trust the new people. Like, if you look at it, like, I definitely said this last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago. I have talked to a couple of my friends who are Wolfsburg fans, and now they are Wolfsburg fans mainly because of they followed Ever Pajor, because they're my Polish friends, as I call them. But they followed Ever to Wolfsburg and then have continued to support Wolfsburg. And I say to them, like, look, what has to happen for, Smilov Lato to start? What needs to happen? What needs to change? Because especially after the Frankfurt game, I thought that, this is kind of how Wolfsburg's season has gone, where they either get really late wins or they get really bad results. And they said, look, the manager doesn't trust some of these new players. He plays Alex Pop all the time, which is not a bad thing because it's Alex Pop. But at the same time, she's not getting any younger. And it needs some sprucing up, especially in bigger games. And the thing is, I was going into that. I've watched Wolfsburg quite a bit this season and not been very impressed with the actual football on the pitch. And so for them to already have qualified, despite their pedigree and everything that comes with the Wolfsburg name, was quite shocking to me. But I also think they've had, an easy run of playing all of their easiest fixtures, similarly to United, quite early on. I think they've had, maybe one of their harder games, but not particularly anything that is like really challenging compared to Arsenal, for example, who have played both of their hardest games in Lyon, the opening round, and Bayern Munich now. So I think it does depend on how your fixtures fell to how quickly you can qualify. Because if you get all the really easy fixtures out of the way in the first 3 match days, you're laughing because you're expected to win those ones. I think that some games, maybe some teams have been lucky to get a point. Or get a win compared to the actual football being played, but you've still done it. So, like, we can't really complain. And also, now you go into the last 2 fixtures, basically, like, happy days. We can rotate. Obviously, if you're not United, you don't have a squad to rotate with. But, other teams, you can. Also, but I say that about United. Also, Barcelona don't have a squad to rotate with because they have no one. But yeah, I think potentially if people were talking about this at the beginning of the season, they would have expected Chelsea to be up there, qualified already, and they aren't because of now 2 1-1 draws in the Champions League. They had 3 1-1 draws on the spin, but at the end of that international break, which not on the spin. That's actually no, because they had the 6-0 win. I'm going to take everything I just said about Chelsea back. It's not true. I forgot about that 6-0 win. Anyway, I think people would have expected Chelsea to be up there, but they are up there. They just haven't got the actual points yet because they drew to 20.
Not for everybody.
Pardon?
It's not for everybody, this early qualification, like.
It's just, why would you make your life easier for yourself when you could just have a little bit of drama and push it as far as you can?
Some would say it's easier and less complicated to just not be there at all. Who wants to be there?
I mean, I would also think that getting knocked out of the Subway Cup is just too fun. It's too fun. Know where the real party is. But yeah, I think we expect Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Lyon to be up there. It's not really surprising. However, what the hell happened to Lyon last week? 3-0 down against Juve. bearing in mind, 2 weeks ago, we were talking to Freya about Juve, and Sean was saying, what the hell's going on with Juve? Because I remembered so vividly watching that. I was watching that game, and they go 3-0 up, and I was thinking, was it Freya's, like, they were having conversation on All for United, All for United, that's the wrong place, All for Women's Football, about how bad Juve are being, like, down to 6th at that point. I was thinking, was it Juve, or were they talking about Roma or a different team? Because I, like, genuinely couldn't remember. I was like, no, it definitely was Juve. And then they're 3-0 up. And then they kind of messed it all up. Well, they did mess it all up, and they probably were lucky for a draw in the end, which is really irritating, because I think if they had got a win out of Lyon, would have been quite the story. But then it didn't even matter anyway, because Barcelona drew the next day, so they're still neck and neck. It was like, but yeah, I think that also was a lot of, everyone's a little bit tired. It was the end of that block. International break was coming up. Everyone was like a little bit tired.
Well, it's a 90th minute penalty that got them there in the end. But I did want to ask, as my final sort of question for our Champions League look back, do you think that the top 4, so the teams that will make it directly to the quarterfinals and not need to go through a playoff, do we think that the top 4 will be made up of 4 of those 5 teams? And yes, Sean, I'm fully accepting of the fact that it probably won't be Manchester United. That's not what I'm trying to say. So Bayern, Barca, Wolfsburg, Lyon, do we think that will be the top 4?
I'm going to say no. I think 3 of the 4 will be that. But I do just see Chelsea if Chelsea can do enough to get in top 4 after the international break with their last 2 fixtures, maybe it's just an assumption based on who Chelsea are, but I just imagine that they'll do enough if they can to be in that.
Chelsea have got to play Roma and Wolfsburg. It's Wolfsburg who've got the possibility to drop down, because their 2 games are going to be against Real Madrid and like I say, Chelsea, both of whom are waiting in the wings, looking to try and snap a position. So would you think it would be at the expense of Wolfsburg?
Yeah, I think it would be Barcelona, Lyon, Bayern, and Chelsea at that point. I just think with Wolfsburg's fixtures, they've got their 2 hardest left, and if you can take points off of the team that you're trying to push into their space, you're kind of laughing, because you are directly impacting them. So I just imagine that Chelsea will get top 4. Unless something like catastrophically awful happens. Not awful as in like injury, but like they just play like really bad for 2 games, then I just see them up there. I think I don't really see a reality where they aren't up there if they play really good football in those last 2 games.
I've had a look at the fixtures, because I look at the table, look at the fixtures, and I'm quite convinced Barcelona and Lyon will be there. I'm fairly confident Chelsea will be there, but that 4th spot, I don't know. It's not going to be Man United. Do Bayern have a slip up in the away against Atletico Madrid? It's possible. Chelsea I do think will finish 3rd. Wolfsburg, especially if Chelsea beat Wolfsburg. The one team I'm looking and I'm thinking, they've got a shot. Don't be surprised if Juventus finish in that 4th spot. They've got St. Pölten away and then Man United at home. I think that's an easy 6 points for Juventus there. And that will take them... I know. That'll take them up to 13. That'll take them up to 13. And I trust that Chelsea will pick up 2 wins against Roma and Wolfsburg? I'm going to say yes. I think they will put it together. Barcelona and Lyon only need 1 win each to reach that 13. If Wolfsburg lose to Chelsea, they'll only get 12. There's a way I think Juventus can get that 4th spot. I think the fixture list is quite kind for them at the end. And I look down and say Arsenal only on 6. I just think, even though they've got Twente and Leuven left, I just think Arsenal have left it maybe a little too late to make a run for that top 4.
I'd never thought we were going to make top 4 anyway. I'd like just to be in a seeded position at the end. I can't lie. As soon as we lost to Bayern, I was like, well, that's top 4 out. I think also, but if you are aware of Arsenal fans after that Bayern game in general, we all said a seeded position is the best we can do now, because you look at everyone else and basically top 4 is out of the question. Obviously, never say never. Something really miraculous could happen, because it's not mathematically impossible. But yeah, I never even considered us when you said who could be top 4, it to be us, purely for how things have happened, even though we did get the win against Real Madrid. I think Chelsea Wolfsburg is going to be really interesting, especially if, and this is especially, but it's pretty much, based on what Sonia said, if Hannah Hampton's still out, because Sonia said she might be out, we might not see her until the new year. So if that, it's basically I'm still not convinced by Stina Johannes at Wolfsburg and how they want to play. I'm not particular. I think she was a really good goalkeeper at Frankfurt. I'm just not really convinced with her at Wolfsburg. It was mainly going because she could win a trophy, which I think is quite silly now that you look at Frankfurt in Europa Cup, but that's just me. But I'm not being convinced by her this season. In all honesty, it's not really worked out in a really good way, in my opinion. And also the back line is still quite not helping her. But then you look at Chelsea and you say, if Hannah Hampton's not there, I like Peng. I think she's a really good young goalkeeper. And I think we saw in the Euros, she is a really good young goalkeeper. But it is a sense of she's not Hannah Hampton. Like that, it's quite a cruel comparison, because Hannah Hampton is, unanimously currently the best goalkeeper in the world. But the back line really, I was about to say exactly that. Consistently this season, and probably into last season a bit, Hannah consistently made her backline look better than it was. And I think we've already seen, even Payor's goal last week was the back line, even though it was from a set piece, it's a rebounded set piece. The defenders around that ball sort of step back and are like, go on then, and let Eva have a shot. And I'm just not convinced currently by the back line of Chelsea, of this trying to force Lucy Bronze and Ellie Carpenter into the same 11, put Lucy Bronze as like a third centre back. I'm not convinced by it. So I think that could actually be a decently high goal line by the end, and maybe a 3-4 kind of situation, because it's a lot of both have decent. Chelsea have a better attack than Wolfsburg, but Wolfsburg still have goals in them. But the back lines could really let both sides down, so it could be like a 3-4 or something like that by the end, purely for the defensive side. It is going to probably let both sides down, which is really interesting, because I think when we think of big teams going against each other, 9 times out of 10, maybe not 9 times, 75% of the time, you expect quite a close, tight game, maybe a 1-0, maybe a 2-1. You don't expect big goal scores or a 4-3 kind of situation, because it's basically each team cancels each other out, because if they're both at a very similar level. But I think, how Wolfsburg will look this season with the back line and the goalkeeper, and also maybe Chelsea not having Hannah Hampton, might make it a more interesting game than on paper it realistically sounds, looking at it.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to agree with that there. And also, when you say you're not Man United, not conceding that many, you're not scoring that many either. And I think that is quite an important point for Chelsea to look out for at the moment. They're getting there, but they've got to be a little bit more prolific, I think, in front of goal, more clinical, not prolific. clinical, I think is what I'm looking for there. So there we go. I wonder if rather than Chelsea, it might be Real Madrid who take off that top spot. I think they get the win over Wolfsburg. They will be, I think, in pole position to potentially get there. So we shall see how they get on. But there we go. That's our Champions League look back. Also, during midweek, we saw the end of the round of 16 in the... Actually, if I tell a lie, we didn't see that. Nobody knew it was happening, but it did happen. There was a second leg of the round of 16 in the Europa Cup, the brand new one that they just don't bother telling anyone about, even though it came with much fanfare. And there were a fair few results there. So Hammarby were 3-1 up against Ajax, and they beat them again 3-1, winning 6-2 in the end. Glasgow City were 1-1 after their first leg, but they lost. It was 1-1 again, I believe, at full time. That went to extra time, and Sporting beat them in extra time with 2 extra goals, making it 4-2 to them. So Glasgow City, the only British interest really in the Europa Cup, are now gone. So there we go. Anderlecht were 1-0 down, ended up losing 3-1 to Austria Vienna. Sparta Prague were 3-0 down against Young Boys. 4-0 win at home, win 4-3. There they are. Häcken were 1-0 up against Inter Milan, remained 1-0 up against Inter Milan. So they have made it through as well. Breidablik were 1-0 down. They won after extra time, 4-3 on aggregate. Nordjylland were 1-0 up and finished 5-0. And PSV Eindhoven were 2-1 down to Frankfurt, who then won 3-1 and have made it through. So 5-2 was the final score there. So we have our quarterfinals for the Europa Cup, which will take place in February. And 4 quite interesting matches there. You've got Sporting against Hammarby, Sparta Prague against Austria Vienna, Häcken against Breidablik, and Eintracht Frankfurt will play Nordjylland. And I think that's quite an interesting draw, because actually you would potentially argue that the big names in that are not really meeting each other yet, which could make for good viewing on the semi-finals and the final. That would be my summary. Liberty appears to be nodding her head, so it sounds like I've said something good. Sean hasn't looked like he's chewed a wasp, so it seems like it's a very good thing that I've just said there. Liberty, why are you nodding at me?
Yeah, I think maybe it's because it's been quite favourable to Hammarby, but I actually think that the way that the draw panned out has been really good, if we could watch it, for the Europa Cup this season, because I think the first big 2 sides that could play each other, if both sides get through, would be Frankfurt versus Häcken in the semi-finals, if both sides get through. But as all the names, on my comments, all the names are gone. It's just people's usernames. So I'm sorry if this isn't actually who I think it is, but who I think is Uncle Tony has put, it's a shame that this Hammarby isn't going to be the Hammarby that plays the qualifiers. I also think the same goes for Häcken. So depending on what Häcken look like come February and or further, that it could be really interesting going into the quarters, because they are the 2 teams that are probably going to lose the most players come January. It's going to be Hammarby and Häcken. Really interesting that after a really high goal scoring season in the league for Häcken, they won off of an own goal in the first round and are held to a 0-0 unless somebody buys her out of her contract. Obviously, that is always a possibility. That's why Häcken gave her a new contract, so somebody will buy it because she's got 4 years now. But yeah, she probably will, but it depends on who's going to still be around her to feed her the ball so she can score. Yeah, it's really interesting that they had a really high goal scoring season in the league, but then went off an own goal that came in like the first 5 minutes of the first leg. I think that is a product of these games are being played at the end of a really long Swedish season, which is quite. I say that in terms of Häcken, because they would have then, by the second leg, they've just won the league. They probably they did celebrate quite a lot, as we've seen all over social media. So it is sort of a metaphorical hangover from the league for them. But okay, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. That's interesting. So maybe she'll finish. Maybe she'll leave next summer. Then maybe that's if she wants to finish school. Anyway, sorry. But I say that about Häcken, but then we see Hammarby once again beating Ajax 3-1, and Ajax are not a bad team. Don't look at their result from the weekend, because they did lose 7-1. But I imagine that's just because they were so distraught about losing to us that they just conceded a bunch of goals by accident. But yeah, like Hammarby once again winning 3-1, really good performance in Europe. They probably had one of the harder two first knockout rounds of anyone, to be honest. Brann is not an easy team, and Ajax are not an easy team compared to some of the other, names that were literally in the hat. They had really quite hard first two rounds, and they both did really well against both of them, 4-1 and 1-1 against Brann, and then double 3-1 against Ajax. So really impressive. But as Uncle Tony said, it's not going to be the same Hammarby. I've already accepted it. We've already said goodbye to Simone Boy, who's not getting a new contract after hers expired. That's going to be the first of what is probably going to be many losses. But yeah, and then I think Frankfurt once again doing enough to eventually get a win. I say eventually, it's only because they conceded first and then decided to fight back. Once again, feels like quite a tale of them right now that they do that. But yeah, they won 3-1 in the second leg. And yeah, I think that it's going to be really interesting next round for quite a few teams. Hammarby Sporting is not going to be easy. We have the luxury of having already played Sporting in a double knockout last season in the Champions League, because we beat them to be playing in the Champions League last season. So it's not like this is first time rodeo. We beat them. They beat us at home at the 3 Arena, but then we went away and beat them 2-0 with that really late winner. And by late, I mean like the last minute of extra time late from Kathinka Tamberg. So, but it's not going to be the same team. So yeah, I think, look, I apologize if you follow me on Twitter, because I've already said this, but I need next season Europa Cup to have a centralized broadcaster. I don't care who. It could be DAZN, it could be Disney Plus, it could be YouTube, UEFA YouTube. I don't care. It needs to be a centralized broadcaster, because the fact that every time we talk about Europa Cup, we make a joke about nobody being able to watch it because each individual country gets its own rights is ludicrous. This is a European competition, and I hate to say it because I detest when people say this, but I will say it purely because it is truthful. This would never, ever happen in the men's game. Every single European competition in men's football, you can watch under a centralized broadcaster, all the games in one place. Each league is given the same backing as the Champions League. Maybe it's not, as big, high profile, but I'm sat here in England, and those are the first 5 names that I'd be telling you aren't going to be playing for us next season. Sorry. In men's football, all the European competitions get the same centralized broadcaster, whether it's TNT, whether it's Prime Video, whoever. They're all in the same place. Why should that be different to women's football? Because what is the point of having a second European Cup if you can't watch it? Or you have to pay. I know, for example, if I wanted to watch Hammarby, I would have first had to get a VPN to say that I'm in Sweden, because obviously I'm not. Then it's a 2-tier viewing to be able to watch the games from Aftonbladet, which is like, quite a high profile outlet. The first is first tier, and then you have to pay extra. You have to pay for the plus to watch Champions League games. And I fully understand like they do that on purpose because people will pay for it.
Yeah.
But it needs to be a centralized broadcaster for every single country, or at least coming from one place, so you can watch all the games. It can't be pick and choose, or each individual country gets its own place, because it's just not good enough, and then nobody can watch it. There is no hype. The Twitter page is about 3 days old. Maybe it's about 3 weeks at this point. I can't remember, but basically it's non-existent. It's just not good enough. And we said this at the beginning when it first came about, and it's the fact that we're still sat here saying, look, nobody knows anything unless you look for the results because you can't watch it, is really bad.
Sean, do you think part of this could be due to the scheduling? Because when you look at the dates for the Europa Cup, almost all of them are scheduled for the same dates and times as the Champions League matches as well. So do you think there is part of them that's thinking there's no point showing this on these dates because more people are likely to be watching the Champions League than the Europa Cup? I'm not saying that is the case, but do you think that could be part of the reason why they've decided not to go fully onto broadcasting it? And therefore, if that is the case, would it make sense to, as the men's Champions League and Europa Cup goes, have a separate day, whether that be a Thursday or whatever, specifically for the Europa Cup, so that it does have the ability to be marketed on its own and put out there?
Well, the men don't seem to have a problem with playing Europa League and Europa Conference League matches on the same day. That works. They're all available to watch. So as Liberty said, find somewhere, broadcast it. Because if you do have a platform for it, people will tend to try and watch it. Simple as. In terms of the draw, Hammarby are in trouble. I'm going to suggest here Hammarby might get knocked out. And it's not just because of the players you'll lose. Hammarby are not going to be in season. And I've seen it far too often with Welsh teams, right? I've seen it too often with Welsh teams in European competitions when they face a team in Scandinavia or whether it be in the Baltic states. When you are out of season, you're facing a team that's currently in season. That's one hell of a task. And Hammarby aren't going to have started the Damallsvenskan by the time these quarterfinals come around in mid-February. Okay, I'll come back to you in a minute. And Sporting are going to be in the middle of a title race, battling with Benfica every single week. And they're going to be in such a good rhythm and going to have that intensity and match sharpness is going to be all the way up to the level it needs to be. Now, when it comes to Häcken, the positive Häcken have was, while they're going to be out of season, so will their opponents Breidablik, because Breidablik play in Iceland, and the Icelandic season also follows in a similar vein to Norway and Sweden. Frankfurt, as long as Frankfurt turn up and play professionally and don't underestimate Norge Island, they should win. And I think Prague, Austria, Vienna is a very, very close battle, which could go either way. But if I'm picking a shock, I'm telling you, Hammarby not starting the season against a Sporting team that are going to be very much in season, peak match fitness, I think that is a problem.
I put my hand up purely to say that, yeah, pre-season. Uncle Tony, you're reading my mind, mate. I was going to say exactly what he's just said. Hammarby are going to be in pre-season. Every year we play at least 2 pre-season games that I know we probably play more. And the Spencer Kupen, the sweet, I think it's Coop, not Kupen. Sorry, Uncle Tony, in advance for you telling me I pronounced that wrong. I can sense it happening. But basically, the Swedish Cup, which is a bit like, is an equivalent of the FA Cup, I always say. It's quite a prestigious trophy. The first round of that is a group stage. It's so fun. It's group stage. You get put in a group, you play all the teams, and then if you got the most points from those games, you go through to the knockouts. Those games traditionally happen at the beginning. At least the first 2 happen at the beginning of March. Actually, I think all of them happen in March. So
that still means you'll have played both legs of that quarterfinal before you even
You
get
know,
into
I'm just saying it's not like they wouldn't be preparing to be match ready. Obviously, they would do that anyway, but it's like they've got the advantage of having that group stage like quite literally around the corner, that they'll be slightly more ready than a team that have played 2 friendlies and a little bit of pre-season. But I completely get your point of the Sporting will be in mid-season. But then my argument back, just purely for the sake of it, would be, but surely Hammerby may not be in full swing of the season, but their legs aren't going to be as tired as Sporting, who would have played 6/8 of the season. I'm trying to think of it. I don't think it's quite 3/4, but it's not quite a half. They've played a good chunk of their season. Surely their legs are going to be a little bit more tired than Hammerby, who are going to be fresh. I'm just trying to play devil advocate, Sean. Stop shaking your head at me. I'm just trying to be a bit annoying and maybe suggest a situation where we might win because you've put it as we're going to lose. But okay. Here's my argument backwards. I've just thought of something.
Oh.
A couple seasons ago, Häcken got to the knockouts of the Champions League. They played that in January. That was so out of season. Because they wouldn't have played most of December, if at all. Because I remember very vividly that Rosa Kofaji goal against PSG in that knockout. That's the season where they were in Chelsea's group in the group stage. But they got to the knockout, and that was played in January. Because I remember Rosa looked really cold in the videos of her goal. So it's not impossible, and I think it is a side effect of unfortunately having to play a summer season, where you do get moments where you are not equally fitness matched to your opponents if you get further in the European leagues. But also it's impossible. You can't play a winter season in Scandinavia. It's impossible. The temperatures just really don't allow it. Even if everyone played in the men's stadiums with roofs, it's not possible. You don't have the facilities to train inside all the time. It's just unfortunately not possible. So you have to work a way around it. And maybe we'll be back in February and Sean has to eat his hat or something but then, maybe because we won't have the players, maybe it's a new manager as well. That's a big one. We've got the luxury of the new manager is coming from the coaching staff. So he's very familiar with this team. If you watch Hammerby's their video compilations, he is actually quite the vocal one compared to other managerial staff. So he's very well rehearsed in this team already, but he is a new manager. It's not a secret. He's a new, technically on paper, a new manager. But maybe we'll surprise Sean, and maybe we won't. Who knows? The luxury of things being in the future is we have no idea.
We will find out in February, that is for sure. Obviously, the Champions League with 2 more games to go, which will be played in December. And then it will be back to February for the knockout phases of the Champions League and also for the round of 16 in the Europa Cup. So we should look forward to that in February. That is for sure. More domestically, we have got a couple of cups that we can take a little look at. Obviously, this evening, the FA Cup 3rd round draw took place, which was incredibly exciting. And we have got the Northern Group and the Southern Group, 10 matches in both groups. Obviously, there will be 20 winners of those games. They will be joined by the 12 teams in the WSL in the 4th round, giving us our final 32 teams of the FA Cup this season. Loads of games. Well, 20, as I just said. In the Northern, we've got Middlesbrough drawing against Fylde. We've got Wolves against Forest, Durham against Sheffield United, Burnley against Peterborough or Wallsend. We've got Newcastle against Liverpool Feds, Leeds against West Brom, Birmingham against Sporting Calcio, Mancunian Unity against Hull City, Derby against Sunderland, and Altrincham against York City. In the South, we've got Sutton United against Chatham Town, which is a superb match all in tier 5. So we are guaranteed a tier 5 side in maybe not. No, Chatham are a little bit higher. Sorry, I got a little bit mad on that one. I got myself a little bit excited there. And I do believe they're a tier 4 team. So ignore me there. But there could be a tier 5 side. Just Sutton are definitely tier 5. Southampton against Royston, which is a massive match for me. Royston are in the league within which I work. And of course, Southampton, a pretty big side as they are. So that'll be a nice trip for them. Dartford, another tier 5 side against London Bees. Bristol City against Portsmouth. Bournemouth against Fulham. Portchester or Worthing against Ipswich Town. Oxford United against Plymouth. Charlton versus Watford or Saltdean United. Leafield against Swindon Town. And Lewes against Crystal Palace. So out of all of those games, anything that sticks out there for you guys?
I'll go Newcastle against Liverpool Feds. I just really like the Liverpool Feds story. I think they're such a well-run club, doing all the right things, and I'm really interested to see how they fare up against Newcastle. Bournemouth Fulham as well. I think Fulham got a really good win against Bristol Rovers in the last round away from home, and Bournemouth are very much a team on the up, so really interested to see how they both do. And also Birmingham versus Sporting Cows. Oh, no, not that one. I'm sure that'll be a great game as well. But Wolves Forest. Wolves Forest is the one for me. I think that is, if you're going to see an upset, I think that is huge upset alert territory. So excited to see that. But yeah, really good host of ties in this third round.
I've got it up on my phone, sorry. I think Dartford versus London Bees is interesting purely because I think the beauty of the FA Cup is sometimes you get draws that are teams that you don't really hear about all too often, maybe because they play lower down or maybe because they're just not spoken about. And I think Dartford made history this weekend by getting through to this round, and also had their highest record attendance over the weekend at Prince's Park in Dartford. Sorry, obviously. So I think the fact that they've drawn London Bees is really interesting. I watched London Bees, one of their FA Cup games last season. Was really quite impressed with them. So that could be really interesting. I have a soft spot in my heart for Lewes purely because of, I think, what a brilliant club, what they do for women's football, and obviously their Fair FA Cup campaign is brilliant. And the fact that they've drawn Crystal Palace is really interesting. Obviously, used to both be Championship / WSL 2 sides. I once watched the craziest game of football of my life, Lewes versus Crystal Palace at Crystal Palace, and it ended like 4-3. It was insane. So really interesting there. Obviously now Lewes are down to the FA Women's National League, but doing really well there. So really interesting for them to get Palace. And I'm not gonna lie, the rest of them some of them sound interesting, but no really like stand out and like oof. To me personally, Durham versus Sheffield United, once again, teams that have played each other recently. Maybe that's interesting from a football standpoint, but yeah, I think I'm going to go with Dartford versus London Bees, and Lewis, and Lewis versus Crystal Palace. Oh, and if Watford get through, Charlton Athletic versus Watford could also be quite interesting. That's a London derby, but Watford have to beat Saltdean first, which I think realistically they should do. But FA Cup, you never know. You can't say for certain with these things. So, but if that is the tie, that's a London derby. That could be really interesting. But yeah, other than that, those are my picks.
Some big ones, that's for sure. And it'll be very interesting to see what they do in terms of picking the game that's going to go on the telly box. But we will have more to discuss on that when we do lower league lingo, which could be Wednesday, could be Thursday. We're just in the moment of trying to nail down our appearees for that one. It's not always the easiest thing. Parents' evening's got in the way. That's life for you in the lower leagues, trying to sort some of these things out. but we will get there. And yes, I can confirm, Uncle Tony, Watford is considered London, which is bizarre. It's like Greater London. It's also Hertfordshire. It's kind of in between the two.
It's like London City Lionesses playing in both Dartford, but then also moved to Bromley. That's not London, that's Kent, but technically every time they play a London team, it's called a London derby. It's like the definitions of London when it comes to football are basically anything that is in touching distance of the M25 is London suddenly. Not whether you're inside it or outside it. If you can get there in about 20 minutes, you considered London. I don't understand it either, but that is apparently how the rules work in football. Bit silly.
Strange thing. Very strange thing. But yes, indeed, there we go. Now, we are going to also have a very brief look at the League Cup, because obviously the 8 teams that... Oh, he goes. We've got to do these things, sure. We can't always talk about things that you enjoy. There are 8 teams, obviously, that will be in the draw for this. The fixtures are obviously going to be played on the 20th and 21st of December. So nice little Christmas present there for Sean. That is going to be drawn tomorrow night, live on the Barclays WSL TikTok account from 6 o'clock. 8 teams: West Ham, Chelsea, Man City, Crystal Palace, Spurs, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Manchester United. Those 8 teams will be in the hat. Sean, I'm not going to ask you about who you'd like to see in it, because I know that the answer to that will probably not be something that we can broadcast, even though it has gone past the watershed. So I'm instead just going to ask you, because it was during this weekend that we saw this. You brought it up, you alluded to it earlier on. What is Ruisha, Becky Lynch, Littlejohn playing at in that game? 3-0 up, and then for reasons only known best to herself, possibly for this, maybe she does want a WWE contract, just puts her in a headlock and drags her over. It was absolutely insane. Why on earth would she do that?
First off, just on the Subway Cup, I did a TikTok yesterday saying the cup should be scrapped, and you'd be surprised how many people agree with me. So I'm not just a lonely voice in this. There's an army of us who all agree that the cup should be scrapped. So when I speak on, I'm the voice of the voiceless, the voice of the millions. Honestly, what? Ruisha Littlejohn is a 35-year-old midfielder who has over 100 caps for Ireland, is incredibly experienced, and should know how to handle herself on a football field. Now, we've all seen the incident. Ruisha Littlejohn pushes Hannah Kane first. Hannah Kane shoves back. Fine. There we go. That's a tete-a-tete. It happens in football all the time. One shove leads to another shove. And normally, that's it. But to then have them to go, I'll tell you what I'll do next. I'll wrap her in a headlock and drive her head first into the turf. It's assault. If you do that on the street, you are getting locked up. Like, you cannot do that. And I hope it's at least a 10-game ban, because I'm sorry, anything less is a joke, because you cannot do that on the football pitch. And if the FA or whoever decides that any they want to send a message out, give her 10 games at the minimum, because it is honestly shocking. You shouldn't do that on a football pitch whatsoever. It's what has gone through her head to do that, I will never, ever know. But
for you, Sean, is this the women's equivalent of Eric Cantona going off into the crowd?
No.
Is it to that level?
Cantona went
completely losing the head.
It's different because Cantona went into the crowd. I think when you bring the crowd into it, that's a whole different kind of territory. But it's just, what can I even compare it to? I'm trying to think. It's not. I don't know why it's the first thing. It's not the same as biting someone. Like, they're both bad, right? And I think they're both. When it's something like that, you know it's wrong, and you think that's a lengthy ban. I think it's the same with this. You know it's wrong, and if you did that anywhere in life, you would be punished severely for it. I think that's what I want to see with this, because I'm sorry, it is, and I hope Hannah Kane is okay. I'm in contact with the FAW trying to find out if she is okay, if she has gone on the plane to Spain for these final 2 friendlies we have. But my God, she could have done serious damage to her. And she's laughing after getting the card. So a woman who doesn't care. This is a woman, by the way, who called Hannah Hampton's behaviour atrocious when she was younger. This is a 35-year-old behaving in an atrocious manner. A joke, an absolute joke.
Sorry, I'm just going to butt in. Even worse than what she said about Hannah Hampton. This is a player who, before the World Cup, called the Colombian internationals animalistic when that behind the closed door friendly between Ireland and Colombia was called off because supposedly, as the report said, the Colombians were endangering the Irish players. This is a player who publicly came forward and said they were being animalistic, which is just, racist. Not 2 years ago, like 27 months ago, she was saying that Colombian internationals were animalistic. And then she thinks that this is okay. Like, genuinely, I think, one, that's beeping hypocritical, because if you've got the balls to come forward and say that women of colour are animalistic, once again, racist, and then you can do that, you think that's okay. But it's just like, in what world is that okay ever? Not even just in football. I can't think of a comparison where somebody's done something like this or something equivalent to what they got. But I think in rugby, in either the Women's Six Nations, no, I think it was the Women's World Cup, one of the French internationals bit a player. And at the time it wasn't cool, but afterwards it was cool. And she did come forward and say, yes, I did it. I apologise. It was wrong. And she didn't play for the rest of the tournament. Like, even if France had got to the final. Did France get to the final? No, Canada did. But they got to the semi-finals. Even if they said, even if you get to the final, you cannot play. I'm not saying that, Rusha Littlejohn should not play again this season. But I do think that, one, Ireland should be looking at punishing her. I'm sorry, it's friendlies you're playing. It doesn't matter if you've got her or not. Not that I think she adds much to your squad anyway. I think the football has very much left her. But I think I'm going to be really honest, I don't think she should play again this side of Christmas. Purely because if she thinks this is okay, it is like she needs to be genuinely taught a lesson, and like the hard letter of the law as such, quote unquote, should be brought down on her, because there is no way if she put it this way, if she doesn't get punished and somewhere down the line she does that again to a player because she thinks she can get away with it because she didn't get a severe enough punishment, she didn't learn her lesson, she genuinely could break somebody's neck. I'm going to repeat what Sean said. I really hope Hannah's okay, because it genuinely looks terrible. And Rusha gets back up afterwards, but Hannah stays on the floor. I hope she's okay. But she could genuinely done really bad damage purely for no reason. Because actually, if you watch it, Rusha pushes Hannah first. So Rusha pushes Hannah. Hannah then pushes her back, and then she puts her on the floor in the headlock. It's completely her own making. She is, once again, 35 years old. It's not like she's a newbie, doesn't know what is right and wrong. She's 35 years old. She is an Irish international. She has played for more teams than I have fingers on my hands to count at this point. And I genuinely think she should not play this side of Christmas again. I don't care if that's harsh. She genuinely needs to be taught a lesson, because that is just not okay. And also the amount of people, it's not funny, but the amount of people who said, this is how I found out she's gone to Crystal Palace, is a little bit funny, and also shows how relevant she is in the world of football right now, if not ever, because nobody knew she was even at Palace. Maybe that's a sad bit about WSL 2 that people don't realise, that she's at Palace. But I like to think it's more of an indictment on her as a player that people just don't know she's there.
It's a very interesting one. And again, this is why WWE always used to put out those "don't try this at home" type things, because you really can injure and hurt people. Just double check. I don't know this podcast. Is it the same one?
Yeah, and it's on TalkSport, which
Yeah.
I just... her sister's a journalist, broadcaster, human, but it's on TalkSport, and I don't listen to it because I don't like Rusha Littlejohn before this incident. Once again,
Hasn't come
racist.
across.
I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't bother because every time I see a clip from it, mainly on TikTok, I think, what are we doing here? But yeah, I just wouldn't bother, Barry. You're better off not knowing.
And I'm quite happy not to. There's only too much to do, too much to watch, too much to pay attention to. I can't. I'm trying to catch up on making sure I know what's going on for Stranger Things with everything that's happening here. I ain't got no time for everything else that's going on. So there we go. That's our Subway Cup chat. We didn't really get to say much about who we think is going to get who, but let's be honest. The League Cup is very, very similar. Time and time again, and it shan't be long in, I'm sure, until we see West Ham go out, Crystal Palace go out, Spurs will probably drop out, Liverpool will drop out, and it'll be somewhere between Arsenal, United, City and Chelsea, because that seems to be the general way in which they tend to fall. So we shall see if that is what happens this year. Now that I've said that, Man United won't make it through and people will come and laugh at me, but you're more than welcome to, because that's what banter's all about, isn't it? Now, whilst we're talking about the English parts of the league, I was sent something by Shamrock, which was happily on my screen a moment ago and now isn't. There we go. Which I've put out to the guys to have a look at. But the news has come out recently in a article in the Guardian saying that the WSL, so this was earlier on today by Matt Hughes, saying that the WSL is concerned by the Sky broadcast slots after a low TV audience figures for the derby. So Arsenal against Chelsea was watched by only 71,000 people. The 12 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, they think, was believed to be a factor in the drop-off. Now, this is something that we've spoken about a few times, really. The last time Arsenal and Chelsea played last season, there was 337,000 people watching on Sky and 682,000 on the BBC. So it's very interesting how that is going. That was the average audiences last season. So if we're getting people watching that often, or that many people watching that often, for us to be down to 71,000 is not ideal. Sean, I suppose really you will see this just as a vindication for what you were saying earlier on in the season, which is that if you try putting all these things on at the times they're putting them on, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the viewership that they want.
Is anyone surprised? Is anyone surprised?
Well, I'm a little bit. Saturday at 12 on the TV doesn't feel like that's the worst time in the world to be trying to watch it.
Right, don't get me wrong. Whatever time you put it on, people will complain. Okay, there's no such thing as a perfect time here, okay? But it's just putting them all together. When you put them all together and limit where you can watch it, you're naturally not going to get many viewing figures because it's impossible to watch every game. If you put them all throughout the day, viewership's going to be up because people are going to be, well, that was a good game, I'll stick on for another game, blah, 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 and all that. Obviously, being on Sky behind a paywall is limiting in itself. And when you say you want to go and watch WSL in the pub, right? You want to watch that 12 o'clock on a Saturday, for example. You are competing with the lunchtime Premier League kickoff, and you are competing with at least 6 or 7 EFL games that kick off as well, which Sky tend to show on their main channels. The Sunday lunchtime, I mean, it's Songs of Praises on a Sunday lunchtime. It's not feasible. It's just not feasible. And don't get me wrong, right? You're not going to have a kickoff time that suits everyone. Everyone's going to have a problem with whatever kickoff time there is. But something has happened in Wales this season which has increased viewership, which has increased attendances. And I think a time where if you put a couple of WSL, if you put half WSL matches on at this time maybe and then split the rest throughout the week. Because I don't agree with putting like 4 on at the same time. I think that's really silly. But I think maybe Friday night could be a prime window for WSL games. I think football is better under the lights. There's not much football on a Friday night. I think maybe 1 or 2 AFL games. Very rare you get Premier League Friday night as well. Yeah, but no one's surprised. And it's a very good article, by the way. I encourage anyone to read the article on The Guardian because I think it is fascinating. But I think Nikki Doucette went on Counterpressed the other week, saying she was encouraged by the figures.
Last week,
saying she was encouraged by the figures of the kickoff time. And then this comes out a week later. We've said it before. I think it's a lot of incompetence at the top. Just a lot of people don't really knowing what to do. Where they're trying to I don't know what audience they're trying to reach anymore. And yeah, it's just, I'm not surprised. And the most surprising thing is that they're surprised and worried about it.
So if I was to say to you then that, again, you read the article, so this won't come as a surprise, but it says that WSL sources say the 70,000 audience was 30% up on last season's 2 Saturday noon kickoffs. Should we not see, is that not, not that I'm really potentially going to bat here for Nikki Doucette, but is it possible that, that's why she sees encouragement, because it is growth compared to last season, even though it's, in general, quite a small number?
But in the same article, it said that when the game was on the BBC and it was a Saturday lunchtime kickoff, wasn't it 700,000? The viewership?
Yeah, and it was in the men's international break, so it was not competing with anything. Well, it could have been competing with EFL, obviously, but much less than, normal times.
See, that's the figure we should be trying to reach. I know Sky won't get because of subscription, you have to pay for it and whatever. That's the level you should be reaching. Like, I'm sorry, you've seen, oh, that's a plan that works. God, if we put stuff on that doesn't clash, or we put it on where everyone can watch, we can get a lot of people watching. But Sky have got a 5-year deal, so there's not much we can do about it for 5 years, I'm afraid. So yeah, liberty.
I've been thinking of of what to do to make both Premier League kickoffs and women and WSL kickoffs work in tandem on Sky, because something has to give. And obviously the priority will always be Premier League. But I've been thinking about this. So obviously this season, I don't know if anyone is particularly... Obviously Barry and Sean are decently happy Premier League watchers. Don't know about anyone in the comments. But this season in the Premier League, they've started an 8 o'clock Saturday kickoff in men's football. So they can get an extra one on TV. Sean doesn't like that, as I've just seen shaking his head. But, they've started a later kickoff on a Saturday. Why not? Here's my suggestion. This is kind of crazy. Remember when we used to have a 6:45 kickoff in the WSL? Why not make that a men's kickoff and push one of the Saturday Super Sunday kickoffs to that time and put a WSL game mid-afternoon? Because the issue with the 6:45 in women's football is a lot of young women were going and walking around in the dark and getting on trains quite late on a Sunday night to go to football, and it is quite dangerous. As a young woman who did exactly that, and if you've ever been to Meadow Park, the lights behind the stadium don't exist. You have the stadium, you have Astro pitches, and then you have a park. And the lights, you now have to walk around the back to get to the entrance, and there is not any lights there. I think they've changed it slightly this season because they had to, because of the Champions League, and Bournemouth had some upgrades. But basically, it's quite dangerous still if you're a young woman, especially if you're alone. So they scrapped the 6:45. Why not put a men's game there and put a WSL game or 2 in a late afternoon, like the 4:30 slot? I know the argument will be then, well, if you're a travelling fan of the Premier League game, it's going to be really hard to maybe get back. But I think a lot of it is you just have to be smart with what game you put there, because obviously if you put Everton versus Chelsea in that late game and Chelsea fans are trying to get back to London, obviously that's quite challenging. But if you put a game in a 6:45 slot in men's football where it's not half a country's trek to get there, it's going to be okay. And also, I think I just think maybe that was what Sky needs to do, just switch up the order a bit. And then also you get football fans who watch the 2:00 Premier League game. They leave the channel on because football. They then accidentally watch a WSL game because it's on at 4:30. And then they watch the late Premier League game. I'm just thinking, what if? Because essentially would be a way that we use all the slots we once had without anything really being clashing too much, especially if Sky are going to force this multi-view BS on us in both the Premier League and also in the WSL. I'm just thinking you've got to essentially what I'm trying to say is try to do their job for them. Apparently, you've just got to utilize all the slots you have. And as everyone always says, nothing is ever going to suit both match goers and also a audience on Sky or BBC or whoever. But the thing is, the 12:00 kickoff time isn't suiting anyone because it's really hard on TV to fight against the Premier League. It's really hard for match goers. I'm really sorry, it still bugs me today, but I had an issue with the 12:00 kickoff months ago, like 2 months ago. And I said, who likes this 12:00 kickoff? I don't. And a fan of a club, and I will not say the club, but a fan of a club replied, I don't mind the 12:00 kickoff. I support Northern team and I live in London and I regularly travel halfway across the country to watch my team every single weekend in my car. And if I can do it, then so can everyone else. And I thought, one, why are you based in London unless it's for your job? But obviously I didn't ask for that much detail because I'm not a nosy bugger. But just because you're happy with being left with inadequate timing doesn't mean everyone is, love. I'm really sorry to tell you that. But for a normal person, say you like to get to the football an hour before kickoff. If you like to kickoff's at 12, you like to get there 11. Some people like to get there earlier, but say you like to get there 11, an hour before. Nice timing. Say you live 2 hours away from your club because you live in the countryside and you support a team that is in a city. You have to get up at 6:00, 7:00 on a Saturday or a Sunday on your day off, the day of rest on one of them, just to get to the football because we've put it at 12:00. And then you get home, you've watched your team win, happy days. Exactly, Connor. You have to leave at 7. What are we doing here? But say you get home and you think, oh, lovely jubbly. My team's won, happy days, 3-0 win, beautiful. I'll turn on the TV and I'll see if I can watch another game. No, you can't because they're all over and done with already and you missed all of them but the one you watched. Not a single part of it makes sense to me.
I agree with the second bit, but is there not, I've got to stand to this one and say, is there not a little bit about, is that not what's supposed to make a football away day though? The fact that you do have to make a day of it, it's not always going to be...
Yeah, away day is fine. That's fine. Not if you can get to your own club. I live to get to Emirates, right? I live an hour and a half away on public transport from the Emirates, which is not too bad because I don't actually live in London. Not too bad, an hour and a half. It's an hour, a 40-minute train, and then a half an hour tube, and then a 15-minute walk, and I'm at the Emirates. That's fine for me because I live not too far. But if you're an Arsenal fan who lives
Cardiff.
Yeah, well, I'm not really sure how many Arsenal fans I've met who live in Cardiff.
A lot. Because my last trip to the Emirates, it took me 2.5 to get up to the Emirates. That's a long wait, but I did make a day of it and I had a lot of alcohol. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
But if you regularly want to go and watch your team and you don't live an hour and a half away, with how expensive public transport is, because most other than Lee Sports Village, you can't really drive to these places.
I did. I went to Lee, and that was it. I had the United season ticket. That was what I had to do, and I live in further away than
the joke was Lee Sports Village isn't in central Manchester. It's a bit out of the way, so it's easier to drive there because you're not stuck in the middle of the city. Whereas you can't drive to the Emirates because you can't park anywhere.
No, I leave just as early to get to Kingsmeadow so that I could find somewhere where I could pull up and park and then pitch a ride or whatever. It's all very difficult. And I don't know. I think I agree with what you're saying, but
I think maybe my main point that I've now got a bit lost in because I had a bit of a rant because I'm not very happy was maybe we need to try 6:45 kickoff time in men's football because if they're happy to do an 8 p.m. on a Saturday, they can try 6:45 on a Sunday, and then we can have an afternoon slot for the WSL. Now I don't realistically think they will do that because the 4:30 is the big sort of game of the weekend slot. And that is the time that the North London derby was on yesterday. So realistically, it's not going to happen because I don't actually control these things. But I do think that could be something that could potentially ease the pain of it all a little bit. But once again, it won't happen because the WSL is consistently an afterthought for the Premier League.
Yeah. But Sunday at 2 used to be when the WSL mostly got shown, and that was a reasonable sort of time. And there's no reason why that couldn't be the sort of the main time, surely.
Obviously, the issue is the fact that Sky have 90% of the games and it's constantly in battle with the Premier League. But when we had the FA Player /YouTube/ outside of Sky, you could put a game on at 2 p.m. and it had no clashes with anything because you didn't care about it. Basically, you didn't care about anything else other than your own broadcasting. So maybe Sky need to stop caring so much about fighting with the Premier League, make a separate entity for the WSL or something, maybe its own channel, stop putting it on Main Event and Sky Sports Premier League and Mix and all the others that they put them on so you can watch them. And maybe they need to make its own channel and then they can do back-to-back games and have, back-to-back as much as possible. So then maybe that's what they need to do, have like a WSL channel that they play all the games on a Sunday. But I still don't think they'll do that because that would cost them more money because I think obviously you have to pay to have a channel. But then they have like Sky NFL and Sky F1. So it's not impossible. Like Sky Tennis they have. So it's not impossible. But I do think it just needs like brainstorming quite quickly.
It's a tricky. I mean, you look at different countries. I'm just looking at the Bundesliga and how they put theirs out. They have a game Friday evening at 5:30. Then they've got Saturday at 11, Saturday at 1, a Sunday, which apparently they haven't managed to get a time for. But then 4, 5:30, 5 o'clock on a Monday. So they spread theirs out happily over the weekend. You go to the Ligue 1 in the French league. They've got a game on Friday at 6 o'clock, a game on Friday at 8 o'clock, but they then do all 4 games on a Saturday at 4. So they
also do 9 o'clock kickoffs in France, which just don't make any sense.
I'm just looking at this weekend.
But like they regularly have like Lyon playing at 9 o'clock French time, and I just don't understand that one. That doesn't seem suitable for anyone, but.
Whereas
I didn't mean to undermine your point because you're making a very good point. I just think it's funny that they have 9 o'clock kickoffs. I'm like, who signed up for that?
I'm just reading what they've got. I'm nowhere near well versed enough to say if they do this regularly. Although I do know that the Bundesliga does enjoy a Friday and a Monday. They do spread theirs very well. And then in Spain, Liga F, you've got 5 games on the Saturday. 11 o'clock has got 2 games, then 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. Then on the Sunday, 2 games at 11 and 1 at 3. So, although to be fair, Liga F has got a lot more teams than the others in terms of trying to put them in there. So, I think there's something to be said for it. I do think that women's football fans want the ability to watch these games one after the other and binge them over the weekend if they could. I agree that the Friday is a very good evening in which we could get those things out there. You can see why Sky have gone for 12 o'clock on a Saturday, because they don't have a Premier League game there. It's always on TNT. So they're kind of hoping, I suppose, that they can put that head-to-head with TNT. But clearly, at this point, not working, because only 71,000 people watching a game that had did have 10 times that viewership the season before is quite something. And again, potentially also pointing back to the viewership of women's football. Are they really in a position where they are willing to fork out the money for putting things behind a paywall? Or are they still refusing to vote for it in that respect and just going for it by watching on the BBC and such like, where it's free to air? In which case, is that where they need to be met? Is that what Sky need to do? Do they need to perhaps put just one or two games behind the paywall and then create something like they used to have, like a Sky Sports mix or something like that I think was free for people to be able to access? Maybe they need that so they have the ability to put a few games on there that people could watch free to air, and just put one or two of the others on the big ones. People wouldn't be delighted about it, I'm sure, but they'd be much more likely to make an event of it. But then again, if you're only going to get 71,000 for the league champions against the Champions League champions, then I don't know what to tell you, Steve. To be honest with you, that is a tricky one. So there we go. That's that card done. Listen, we are well into it now. We're 100 minutes into the show. So I'm not going to sit here and go, right, let's go through every single league that we potentially could have done. That was there as a filler. But I will ask, as the final question of the day, have there been any results, any leagues that have sort of stood out for you over the course of the last 7 days?
Yeah, there was the playoff for Damallsvenskan yesterday. BP won 2-0. I think I say this like every time I talk about it, but essentially works in the same way as what the WSL work this season, except for it's not the team that finished last in the Damallsvenskan, it's the team that finished third from bottom. They play third from top of the second league. They have always done it. Whoever wins gets to play in the WSL. Sorry, I'm getting tired now. In the Damallsvenskan the following season. And it actually got a bit dramatic at the end of the regular season, because it's basically going to be between BP and Rosengard, who was going to get the playoff place. Obviously, last season, Rosengard won the league. So it ended up coming down to they did not play the playoff. It was BP. They won 2-0 yesterday. I think that Bayern won 5-1 yesterday, despite going 1-0 down to a penalty in the first 10 minutes. But Hoffenheim had a player sent off just before half-time, so really helped Bayern in that case to win 5-1. And that's two heavy defeats now, back-to-back for Hoffenheim, because obviously they lost 6-4 in the Cup the weekend before to Frankfurt, which we talked about last week. Leipzig lost 3-1 to Wolfsburg. Leipzig have not really been the same since Giovanna Hoffmann did her ACL 6 weeks ago, a month ago. And they've been quite up and down. They're now 9th. For a team that we were looking at pushing into sort of the top 5. Really not great from them. 3-1 loss, as I said, to Wolfsburg. Sort of it. I can't really think of anything else. Barcelona won 4-0. Linda Caicedo signed a new contract at Real Madrid to keep her there until 2031, which I didn't realise was a real time, which I think is really interesting. And I like maybe both Sean and Barry's opinions on this. Real Madrid are, always the bridesmaid, never the bride to Barcelona in every single competition. The league, the cups, because of who Barcelona are. Would you, if you were Linda Caicedo, a very young, very talented young player, sign a 6-year contract extension at a club that doesn't really look like it's going to push for trophies really anytime soon, both in the league, and it's quite hard, I would think, of them to really push for much in the Champions League, purely because there's better squads. Would you sign a 6-year contract, or would you sign a 2-year and then see what you're looking like after 2 years or something? Or am I being stingy?
I think it's a case of, I think it's a couple of things. If Caicedo's happy in Madrid and happy with life, then I don't really care what anyone else has to say. If she's happy, good on her, and well done for signing a 6-year deal. I'm sure and it's a very deserved deal, by the way, because she is an absolute superstar in the making. I'll also say I think Real Madrid are covering their own backs because they wouldn't want to lose her on a free. And now with such a bumper deal, they can sell her on for really big money, which they deserve as well for helping Caicedo in her development. So I think I don't see her staying for 6 years. I do see her moving on, but I think it's a case of Caicedo is happy, so why not change things at the moment? And Real Madrid are doing it to make sure they get a really good fee for her whenever she decides she wants to move on.
Yeah, I think Sean's hit the nail on the head there, really. It protects everybody. It gives Linda Caicedo the opportunity to stay at what is still a competitive club. You know, it's not like we're sitting there and saying, oh, they're going to be down at the bottom. And we just don't know what's going to happen with Barcelona. You know, they've already had a rocky summer where they had to lose a lot of players and sell a lot of players, and you just never know how Barcelona. Nobody ever expected Rangers to drop down as far as they had to drop when they had their financial dramas. So anything could happen. You would argue with the two that perhaps Real Madrid are slightly more stable in that respect, but equally Barcelona much more likely to be winning everything, as they currently top of the Champions League, top of the Liga F as well. So, you know, I completely agree with Sean in terms of it really is down to the player, and actually how refreshing to see some of these big name stars actually putting their line in the sand and saying, no, this is my club, I'm going to try and help build it and give it that opportunity. Because I think if you end up with having too much of a monopoly across these sorts of, it's easy for me to say, across these leagues, you end up in a bit of a drama. You don't want every player going to Chelsea. You don't want every top player going to Barcelona. You don't want every top player going to Bayern Munich. You want them to be spread out, because otherwise you're never going to get that competition that I think we're all craving across the countries. So, yep, I would go along with that. And indeed, as Tony says there, I think it's the start of CD tackle and building the squad around Linda Caicedo, which was going to be my final point. That would make sense.
That's a really funny joke from Uncle Tony, just putting that out there. I feel like that's gone over Barry's head a bit, but essentially Real Madrid bought out CD Tacon to make Real Madrid.
I don't even know what CD Tacon is. It sounds like something.
It used to be a team, and essentially when Real Madrid decided they wanted to take women's football semi-seriously, in 2020, not too long ago, they essentially just bought out a team that already existed. That's the joke. That's why I was giggling. That's essentially what he's saying. Hope they, as in the original team, build the squad around her, because Real Madrid bought that team to basically start from the top essentially and not try and fight their way up like they probably should have.
Imagine if Real Madrid bought out Barcelona, if their money troubles continued. That would be quite a moment. That would make MK Dons and AFC Wimbledon look like small fry change. That's for sure. Right, well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. We have been all around the world, quite literally, this evening. We started off in America, where we congratulated Batman's very own Gotham FC as they were, well, just crusading to a superb victory against Washington Spirit, who are going to need some if they're going to resurrect themselves for next season. We've been round to Europe. We've looked at European competitions. We've been back in the WSL. We've looked at everybody's favourite cup, the Sandwich Cup, and of course the FA Cup. And we've flown ourselves back round here. There's internationals taking place Sean, I know it's your favourite time of the year when we hit the internationals. Is there any reason this international window why anybody should care?
Liberty's shaking her head. It is mostly friendlies, but we do have the Nations League final and third place playoff, and it is a prestigious competition. I won't be told otherwise.
It's a glorified friendly competition that shouldn't be taking place and is completely bollocks. And anyone who's trying to tell me that a two-legged final in the Nations League is supposed to be competitive and a really serious trophy is very, very silly, and I will not stand for it.
This is how I
sat down then.
He feels about international friendlies like I do about the Subway Cup. Fair enough. Pointless. Anyway, look, a two-legged final between Spain and Germany will be good to watch. I think after Spain, what Spain did to Sweden, I'm quite interested to see if they could manage to do something to Germany, but I think Germany are a bit more resilient. And then you've got Sweden versus France in a third place playoff. You've got a couple of interesting friendlies. England aren't playing any interesting friendlies. England never do. You've got Wales are playing Switzerland or South Korea. Scotland are playing China in their second game, but I can't remember who they're facing in their first game. The Republic of Ireland have got one against Hungary this window. They haven't got a second. No friendlies for Northern Ireland, who have lost their manager. Tanya Oxtoby's just joined Newcastle. So quite interested to see what Northern Ireland decide to do in the future. USA versus Italy, I think, is a really nice double header. I think that'll be a really interesting test for both teams. And Portugal have got Netherlands and Brazil. I think that's a really nice couple of games for them. Norway have got Brazil as well, and there's Norway-Denmark. There's a couple of really interesting games in this international break, and it's the last one of the year, so you've got to make up for it while you can before the Nations League / World Cup qualifiers begin again at the start of March.
And obviously, the most important two fixtures of this friendly break is Poland versus Latvia and Poland versus Slovenia. Obviously, the height of entertainment. Everyone should be tuning in if they can. No, but I'm going to be serious. You know, Poland for 90% of 2025 had really, maybe not 90%, maybe like 75%, had really hard. Other than their first Nations League at the beginning of the year, the Euros and then the two friendlies that preceded this international break were all really hard teams. That does include Wales because
we've not won this year.
But it was a Euros team. It was similar level for Poland.
We didn't have Jess Fishlock. She was gone.
Exactly, hard team. Poland, Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, and Denmark. We played in the space of about 4 months. That is hard. So they deserve a little respite by playing Latvia and Slovenia, who also are not going to go down without a fight because they want to end 2025 on a high note. And then we go again next year with our Nations League A teams once again, which is going to be really hard because we've got the Republic of Ireland, the Netherlands again, and another team. France. Oh, yeah, because I ended up having a Sean equivalent international team. My friend Tom is Irish, and my friend Rose is Dutch. So I just constantly playing all my friends. Hate it here. But yeah, it should be good. And also we have Eva back now. We didn't have her last international break because she was injured. So she's back because she's returned like she never even left, if anyone's watched her for Barcelona. So yeah, should be good for Poland because Sean decided we were just not important enough to mention us.
Can't remember everything. I'll try my best here.
That's true, he can't. Well, there you go. That is the internationals. I'm going to find it really interesting to see if Liberty maintains that energy for two-legged finals, if Hammarby make it to the Europa Cup final. All of a sudden, then, I think it's going to be the best invention the world's ever had. We can watch Hammarby twice. Won't it be the most
Depends on how we do. Depends on how we do, who we get, what players we still have. There's a lot of variables between now and that final for Hammarby.
Cool. Never thought I'd call you that, Liberty. But there we go. Right. That is a successful evening. Well done, everyone. My thanks once again to Liberty and Sean and to all of you in the chat. Thank you to Shamrock for throwing out there on Twitter another discussion point. Do feel free to jump over onto Twitter and throw those sorts of things over to us. If there's things you would like us to discuss and bring up, feel free. We will, where possible, try and look to get those things up and discussed. So a massive thank you, as I say, to everybody for watching, whether you're watching this live or whether you are watching this on catch up. And again, I would just like to finish this evening purely by saying a massive thank you to the wonderful team that have made us a runner-up in Best in Women's Football, to Sean, to Liberty, to Freya, of course, who couldn't make it on this evening, for Rob, for the times that he jumps in and helps us, for Connor as well, when he jumps on every once a year, effectively, we see him, and of course, to all of my guys and gals that help us out on Lower League Lingo, for Gareth and for John, the OGs in that one, Stu and Nick, and even Kieran, who's jumped on a couple of times. So a massive thank you to you guys for all of your help. But let's be honest, we've only just begun, as the Carpenters once sang. See you next week.